How does character progression and campaigns work in a cross-playable system? Hi, I'm Michael Vossen, creator of Radiant Tactics, and today we're going to look at what it actually looks like to make characters and play them in a variety of games. Radiant Tactics' vision is to let you make characters and play them in war games, in co-op tradable card games, in games that play like all the best of the tactics genres has to offer. And so today we're going to look at how that actually works. To appreciate what's unique about Radiant, let's briefly review how campaigns and character creation work in traditional RPGs. And there's lots of systems out there. This could be something like a D&D, a Pathfinder, lots of varieties. But in many of them, you have one player who's kind of essentially a super player. You have the DM or GM or whatever the system calls it. And this player acts as a master record keeper. They kind of keep track of the campaign's progress. So they run the adventure modules. They're often the kind of expert on the rules and the system there. So if players have questions and don't have as strong of knowledge, the GM is there to support them in that. And the GM also is kind of more of the arbiter. If there's rule questions or character creation questions, can I do this? The GM is the kind of authority on what's permissible and what's not in their campaign. And some of the things we like about the traditional structure is that having a GM role removes campaign administration barriers. So all the players don't have to kind of go and read the learn about every monster, every kind of survival and adventuring rule. The GM is kind of the expert on that. So overall, there's less to kind of learn. A GM is really for narrative and role playing. The GM is able to make the world react to the player's choices. So part of the fun of role playing is making decisions about what from your character's perspective, what they have reason to do and act, and then seeing the world respond to those choices. And the GM is kind of like the superhero in terms of thinking about, making interpretations of how is the world going to actually behave to player choices. And the other nice thing about the traditional RPG structure is that, for a GM, they are kind of it's a creative outlet. It lets you be an author, storyteller of a non-traditional story. It's kind of the lead kind of emergent narratives within kind of the bounds of the rules. Other kind of characteristics to note about a traditional RPG structure. So often when you have a campaign, it starts out with everybody making a character. So you have everybody in the player cohort makes a character. These characters often level at roughly the same rate there, and so kind of gives the GM a little bit of a clarity on kind of where how to balance the difficulty of different kind of combat and explore challenges there. And usually the kind of a traditional RPG gaming group meets together, could be, as much as they're available. That's kind of the biggest challenge to running a traditional RPG campaign is often the scheduling and trying to get everybody who's needed to play there in the same room on the same day. That's a flash review of traditional RPG campaign structures. And next, we're going to look a little bit about the challenges that a cross-playable game system has in running campaigns like these. While the traditional RPG structure really excels at role-playing and world immersion, world reactivity, it has some shortcomings as part of a cross-playable system. So if you were to treat character creation and campaigns in general were all to have the traditional RPG structure, you wouldn't be able to progress your characters while playing your war games because the GM's not there. Kind of any kind of instance of a game that you could bring your characters to, you would kind of lose the progression wherever the GM was unavailable to play. So you could have co-op TCG sessions where players are available to meet and play, but the GM's not there or can't thread it to the campaign. You could have solo adventures that players play their characters at there and would kind of lose the progression there. And this dependence on having a GM player available to progress your characters really undercuts the main value premise of a cross-playable ecosystem, namely that in a cross-playable system, you should be free to continue to progress your characters. You could both take them anywhere, so take them to war games, solo adventures, TCGs, and narrative campaigns of the traditional RPG variety. And you should also be able to progress, continue authoring your characters wherever you go. While Radiant Tactics supports playing campaigns as traditional RPGs, especially kind of the narrative sort, we need to figure out a different way to do campaigns, and we need to think about character creation and campaigns differently. This was kind of our big challenge. How do we have character creation and campaigns that don't undercut the value to players that you get from having a cross-playable RPG system? Radiant Tactics' solution to this challenge was to create a new style of campaign. It's what we call a distributed campaign. It's a campaign where every player who plays is also a GM, more of a lightweight GM here in this case, though, whereas lighter heavyweight a GM as the player wishes to be. So instead of having one kind of set of progression rules, we've got different kind of layers. Ones that are very lightweight and easy to kind of run, that involve just characters gaining mastery points in certain situations, to ones that are more immersive, that involve crafting, gathering materials, using those to create projects and train your squads and units together, that require a lot more administration weight, but also let the players role play as a certain kind of organization in the world. And so when you have an architecture like this, this means that when each player is the GM, that means whenever you play, you have kind of a GM present, and each player is able to kind of advance their own forces. So add new units, new equipment, advance their essentially levels of their characters, get new mastery, and so on and so forth. So this preserves the freedom of a cross-play system where whenever you play with anyone, you're able to progress your characters and advance your campaign. It gives you flexibility on the kind of styles of kind of the sort of administrative weight you want to take on. You could play something as easy as getting mastery points for certain actions and outcomes, to something much more immersive, involving kind of going out into the world and gathering resources and gathering the experts to be able to craft them. It supports, now the other nice thing about this is it's also remains compatible with the traditional RPG campaign style. So instead of the traditional campaign style being the general format, now it's just kind of a special one where when you have a player who has a very cool idea for a story or a campaign that they want to run, you can, all the players can create new units or take existing characters from their rosters and have them go off on that narrative challenge. So what really sets Radiant Tactics apart from other RPGs is that our basic campaign structure is a distributed campaign, a campaign that every player is able to run, where the special case of the characters going off into a GM run, heavy narrative, heavy immersive one is one that you could send your units onto, but when you want to play with anyone and continue progressing your campaign, it looks different than a traditional RPG structure. We shift our focus a little bit away from specific individual characters, though they're still very important, to our team, our roster. And so one of the central elements of a distributed campaign in Radiant Tactics is picking a themed roster palette. So in Radiant Tactics, character creation is a little bit more, begins and is a little bit more about your roster, your team, and kind of the theme for that. You could think in terms of role playing, there being like the central question of, why are all these adventurers all together? What keeps them together? What keeps them sticking together and not just kind of going off their separate ways? In traditional RPGs, sometimes the campaign setup has a prompt or some reasons why your characters have gotten up, but Radiant Tactics starts kind of with that prompt. Instead of kind of thinking about your character and then kind of reasons why you're there, you're starting about like what is kind of the theme, what unifies all these folks and what are they working towards. And often you could think of it. Some of the things that keep people together could be like shared enterprise or shared ways of life. Sometimes there's backgrounds. We've got a lot of greater entities and kind of like so you could imagine ones that are all graded. All the characters are kind of. Have relationships to a giant dragon goddess or whatnot, and that's kind of what keeps them together. So there's lots of different creative possibilities here, but with your campaign, you start kind of thinking about, you start from one. So you could have an arms guild, characters who have a certain set of skill set and train that, and it's kind of, you're kind of creating characters from a limited set of options for species and classes, and with different options adding them to your roster. The other thing that a roster focus adds is, because each player is running their own campaign, so you give them a range of choices on how heavy recording, how many restrictions, whether they want to be light on restrictions, adding people, or they want to make it very kind of themed. So you could imagine one player playing a campaign with a set of rules for the Arms Guild, where there's a construction of smithies, and there is training of new units under older units, and another one where it's a little bit more less restrictive. It's just kind of adding kind of units as rewards for playing adventures and progressing their mastery there. It's kind of your choice of how immersive you want to kind of run your campaign. The second role-playing element a roster adds is kind of what are you trusted for? So we could think of these kind of rosters as entities out in the world. And in our kind of developing character and narrative and progression systems, we have a number of values that orgs can be trusted for, and that can play a role in which missions that you're able to get, what sort of rewards you're able to go with, starting, what kind of starting equipment a certain module gives you beforehand, because they trust your group to carry it out, and what might be withheld because you're held in suspicion. So with Radiant Tactics having the roster as your kind of main unit of progression, kind of the main kind of focus for a campaign, you get a couple dimensions of progression that you can have while cross-playing games. So for each character within your roster, there is progression through mastery. You can think of leveling through classes, adding kind of new skills here. A character, each character class mastery has 3 levels: novice, advanced, and master, all with kind of new abilities and such. And so every character in your game can pick classes, do combinations, and progress that way. Same with equipment. Your character will be able to explore, definitely by default be able to kind of take equipment that they find on adventures. And if you're kind of running something more immersive, and if you pick if you want to kind of run campaign mechanics that involve crafting and projects like that, then you'll be able to create and craft items for your characters using the materials that you find out in the world. So every character in your roster can progress in that kind of individual style. And then you could also imagine your roster itself progressing as it's adding new units and squads. Units kind of come into flavor. They're the heroic characters, kind of individuals with higher kind of level caps than others, and then squads, which are more of a group of units that you could kind of use in to fill lots of slots that are really useful to bring along when you're playing game modes like a kind of wargaming mode that require a larger number of units, whereas a heroic character you might play one of those along with other players' characters in more of a traditional RPG. So the distributed campaign style lets you do that all. It lets you play with anyone. It really keeps that promise of a cross-playable system. Play and progress your characters with anybody, whatever you play. You've got a new degree of freedom to invest and author characters with Radiant Tactics. For our video, thank you for watching. If you're interested in more about our games or want to try our free demos, please visit www.radianttactics.com. Please like and share this video. We really are looking to build community, find people who are interested in this sort of game, and we could really use help play testing a bunch of our demos and scenarios to see how close are we to the target gameplay of a lot of the games game styles that we want to emulate in our system. I'm Michael Vossen. Thank you for your time, and have a good day.